Hey guys, it is a Sunday night, and you are joining Aaron and I to talk about Patriots Week, where we are going to be joined by our friend Mark Schofield. But first, our guys from Handsome Jack.
Broadcasting live to Bills Mafia worldwide with Greg Tompsett and Aaron Quinn.
Welcome to the NFL.
Doesn't matter what's happened before today. Today's a brand new day. It's a brand new season.
Your number one podcast for objective Buffalo Bills coverage. No matter where you are, we got you covered.
Good evening and welcome to the Cover One Buffalo podcast. You are joining your host Greg Tompsett along with my partner in crime, Aaron Quinn. Aaron, happy Thanksgiving. We made it through a holiday weekend. We both survived. Our wonderful families
different
visiting
experiences.
Us for the weekends with slightly different
I'll just leave it. Yeah, we'll leave it there. But you know what? Along the way, the Bills got a dub. And I didn't have a lot of time to check in on the Mafia here with all the family stuff going on, but a weird vibe after a dub. So maybe we can get into that later on in the show and where we're kind of at.
Yeah. Things have been interesting. Interesting is probably the right term. And we'll go through it. And I know a lot of people were able to watch an interesting Patriots-Vikings game for the late night matchup in Thanksgiving Day. So we now have both teams not on short rest, having a full week in between, but coming into a Thursday, and everybody knows them well. There's no person that we will enjoy our time more talking about Patriots Week than our man, Mark Schofield. Mark, how we doing, sir?
I'm doing well, gentlemen. It is great to be back here to sort of kick off Pat's Bills Week. Pat's Bills Week is always a fun week for me because, over the years, we've gotten to do shows like this one, got to go on so many different Buffalo pods.
You suffer through Drew on Rockpile.
I mean, that's
so nice of you to help them out.
That's tomorrow night. I get Kevin and the rest Tuesday afternoon as well. But no, I love Bills Week because, recently, especially over the past couple of years, with the way that the Bills have sort of become the team that everybody else in the East is really chasing. It's becoming an extremely enjoyable, week. It's become an enjoyable game to watch, to study, to look forward to. So I always love coming on. And like we were saying before the show, this game, at least in recent years, these games tend to be around the holidays too. So we're all generally in better moods. I know Aaron, talked a little bit about, his Thanksgiving, but we're
smooth sailing from here on out, right?
Yeah. Smooth sailing from here on out. But it's always fun to be with you guys, so I'm excited to dive in.
Well, I'm excited to have you too at this point because I'm excited about this matchup, a little nervous and what you and I are going to be talking about. But before we do that, we've had you on here every year as well. But outside of your work with the Patriots, you do a lot of work with QBs around the NFL and the development of QBs. And obviously, Josh Allen is a guy you've had your eye on closely, and we've kind of had some ups and downs that you've been coming in and back and reporting back on. And right now, obviously, the Bills' offense is still one of the top offenses in the NFL, and they're still putting up really good numbers, but it's not meeting the expectations of Bills fans. Obviously, what we saw last year, if you can't see my shirt on YouTube, the game the Bills had against the Patriots, a perfect performance, but Josh had that stretch, which unfortunately, whether it's fair or not, led Bills fans to have expectations that this might be the greatest player we've ever seen play football, and he could do this all the time. But there's having some struggles, turnovers in the red zone. What are some of the things you're seeing from Josh Allen this year from an outsider's perspective as a guy that watches a lot of quarterback play?
Yeah, first of all, I wasn't going to mention that shirt, but since you brought it up, I mean, I'm fighting through this show having to stare at that shirt. Let's just put it that way. It's a little.
It happened on my birthday. If it makes you feel any better.
No, I mean, no. Look, hey, if my team had put up a game like that, a performance like that, one of the best offensive playoff performances I've ever seen, I'd probably have 10 of those shirts.
Yeah,
so
right.
Believe me, I get it. It's interesting, as sort of an outsider. You guys sort of teed it up. As an outsider looking into, say, Bill's Twitter right now, there's some unease, there's some angst. And, when you've had some of the Vikings loss, for example, when you've had those red zone interceptions and turnovers that you alluded to, for example, you can understand why there would be a little bit of an unsettled feeling around the Buffalo fan base. But as somebody, like you said, an outsider looking in, he's still 17 in my mind. And if you had any questions about that, the throw to get you guys that victory against Detroit on Thursday, not too many other people on the planet can do that, you know? And I do think that he's not 100%, you know, when watching that game with my family. I remember there was a moment I actually turned to my dad. My dad was like, what's going on with Josh Allen? Like, because my parents, they're in a pick and pool every week, and they pick the Bills, and they were starting to sweat that one. And seeing his ball carriage, seeing his motion, and the first throw he had in that game, he's just throwing a hitch route to the left side, and there's like a more pronounced dip and loop to his throwing motion that I'd seen really from him ever before.
Yeah, he and Diggs always connect on that, right? Like,
yeah, but he just seems like, you know, it just doesn't seem quite there for him. I think he's still dealing with a little bit of elbow, so you're seeing a little bit more of a loop to the throw motion at times. But when you can make the throw he made against, you know, to Diggs, and a lot of people have talked about, you know, you get the Tampa 2, you get the underneath guy that's not getting a ton of depth. That was a once in a lifetime kind of throw. But he makes those throws all the time, even with this elbow injury. And so I think it's a scenario where the Bills are sort of working through, okay, maybe the receiver room hasn't come together the way you would have liked. I saw our good buddy Nate Gary was talking about that earlier today on Sunday about, you know, Gabe Davis didn't become the true number 2 we thought he was going to be. There's a reason why people are saying, hey, Odell to Buffalo would be a fantastic move to get another, you know, receiver down the stretch here to take a little bit of the stress off Stephon Diggs. I think there's a feeling out process that Ken Dorsey and the rest of this staff is going through right now. Okay, what are we going to do in the passing game outside of Stephon Diggs? Because Diggs is still going to get his opportunities. He's still going to get open. One of the top receivers in the NFL. But what do you do when that's taken away? And of course, we all know where this conversation leads over the next 4 days. What does Belichick do to Diggs? Yep. Is it a Jonathan Jones game? Is it a Jalen Mills with dedicated safety help kind of game? Are we going to see, like they used a lot on Thursday night with Justin Jefferson, a lot more zone coverage, even though New England has been man heavy this year? They've sort of, while the league's going to all this too high stuff, they've gone in the other direction, really leaned back into the single high, cover 1, cover 3 stuff that they've tended to do in the past. And so obviously I think, at least with the Bills have the ball, that's going to be the focus of the discussion. But for me, Josh Allen is still one of the first guys I turn on every Monday or every Friday morning when it's time to sit down and study quarterbacks, because there are throws that he can make that other people can't make. There are throws that he will attempt that other quarterbacks won't even dream of. Yeah. And that's just who he is. Have there been some sort of gunslinger moments? Have there been some sort of riskier throws this past couple of weeks that maybe he should have sort of dialed back a bit? Yeah. But you don't want to dial Josh Allen back. Like, let him. If he throws a mistake, makes a mistake, throws a pick, whatever, you live with that because of everything else he can do that few other people can in this league.
So before we get into the specific matchups, let's talk a little bit about the Patriots. There's been, I think, kind of an odd season to this point with some ebbs and flows and some expectations. Obviously, initially hoping for and expecting a year 2 leap for Mac Jones after what was, you know, pretty universally lauded as a strong rookie year. Some odd performance here. You start 1-3, then all of a sudden rattle off 5 out of 6, lose that one against the Vikings there. And I think it's been interesting from afar to see Patriots fans expectations waffle back and forth as like, oh, all right, we're totally out of it, let's look to next year. Or, oh, hey, it's Bailey Zappi time. And like, hey, no, we've got it reined back in here, let's make this playoff run. Where is everybody's heads at right now as far as what kind of season this is and what they're working towards?
You know, everybody's heads are kind of all over the place right now. I mean, to be honest, and like you said, it's been a roller coaster ride, and really it sort of dates back to the summer when it was all the palace intrigue over who's calling plays. And we just had a nice little laugh over the R Lads de facto offensive coordinator rotation for Matt Patricia, which is hilarious. Greg pointed that out. I had never seen that before. It's just brilliant. And, you know, in talking to people that were on the ground all summer long, I heard phrases such as worst offense ever, you know, least organized offense. I've seen better Pop Warner teams. Like, it was ugly what was coming out of training camp. And if you remember, that was when they were going to work towards this outside zone, wide zone, boot action, Shanahan-esque type of system. And then they sort of moved away from that. You know, they moved away from that early. In week 1 against Miami, I think they had the second most outside zone, wide zone run plays in the entire NFL. They've gone completely away from that. Since then, they're like in the bottom third of outside zone, wide zones. They've gone into more of the inside zone, gap power stuff that we've seen. And it's kind of set up, what they're doing, or at least trying to do what we saw some of Thursday night against the Vikings. But it's been a roller coaster season. Then you have the Mac Jones injury. And then you have sort of Zappe fever, where everybody's saying, well, maybe Bailey Zappe is the guy because he beat the Detroit Lions and the Cleveland Browns. And then you have that strange Monday night game where Jones starts, but Zappe comes in after an interception, and Schefter's out there tweeting that you'll see both quarterbacks anyway, and Belichick's saying this is part of the plan. We're all kind of left scratching our heads. But, this is the stretch of the season now where we're going to find out, okay, what is this team really all about? Because you have the game against Minnesota. You lose that one. Yes, you beat the Jets twice in 3 weeks, but that was the Zach Wilson Jets, not the Mike White Jets. And those might be two very different teams as we saw today. You're going to have this Bills game, which is obviously huge. Then you're going into the West Coast swing where you've got Arizona, you've got Las Vegas, back-to-back weeks. What's up, Kevin? See you in a couple of days. Then you got Bengals. And right now, that Bengals game in a couple of weeks might be a playoff game. Because you look at the playoff standings right now, like the loser of that game might be on the outside looking in. And oh, by the way, you finish Miami at home at Buffalo. Like, this is the sort of make it or break it stretch. Their defense, I trust. I know, look, they had their troubles Thursday night, but for the most part, I feel pretty comfortable about the defense. The run game, I feel pretty comfortable about. It's the pass game, pass protection, Mac Jones making second, third reads in the pocket, things like that. Like, that's the stuff that they have to sort of figure out in addition to what are they in terms of the passing game. Are they a gun spread team? Are they an under center team, under center play action team? Like, they're still trying to find sort of a pass game identity. We're past Thanksgiving now. You should have figured that out by now. Yeah. The fact that they're still sort of wrestling with that doesn't give me the warm and fuzzies for a playoff stretch.
Well, let's talk about that side of the ball that you trust. It's actually funny because honestly, literally, if somebody watches this show every single week, I've gotten the best matchup every single week heading into it, the marquee matchup. I didn't set this up, but here we are. I've got the marquee matchup, Mark. We're going Pats defense, Bills offense. We're going to talk about this side of the ball real quick. And I kind of want to pick your brain because you talked about it a little bit with last week with what they did with Justin Jefferson and going a little bit more zone. I really think that's going to be the same type of approach that they take with the Bills in terms of what we saw from the Bills last week and having some success with trying to spread out a defense. And I don't think that the Patriots do want to play man and allow the Bills to spread out, because if they're playing man, I think they want to bring 5. And I don't think they want to play that game with Miles Bryant and Isaiah McKenzie again. And so I do think they're going to want to stay in zone and run some of that. But what's your opinion on that? What's your takeaway? Because I'm expecting a lot more heavy zone, what they kind of did to Minnesota, but Minnesota still put up points and moved the ball pretty well against that defense, right?
Yeah, no, you're exactly right, Aaron. And, I think anytime I enter a week like this, my first fear, not my first fear, but like my fear 1C or D is Josh Allen running the football. And I know that sounds strange, but when you get into, and we saw this in the playoff game last year, we saw it in their second meeting last year, there were instances where they got him to 3rd and 7, they played man, and Allen made a play with his legs. And in my mind, there's nothing more sort of deflating from a defensive perspective than to get the 3rd and long and give up a scramble for a first down. And so I think that's one reason why, in addition to all the other reasons we're about to talk about, you might see more zone this week, just to sort of keep eyes on them. That's one reason. The other reason, they've been pretty good getting pressure with 4. Yeah. I think they're like 3rd in the league in terms of pressures with 4. The Cowboys and the Jets are up there as well. I think they've got either the 2nd or the 3rd most sacks. Cowboys and Jets are up there as well. They've done a pretty good job this year of getting pressure with 4. They really sort of like a sort of 4-man front where they can maybe kick Wise inside, Uche at times on one edge. Obviously with what Matthew Judon has done. And they really like in sort of some of those, and some of those passing situations, what they like to do is go with an under front to get Judon isolated against the tackle and have the overload look to the other side. So you're forced to either slide protection away from him or dedicate help to him with a half-man slide look. And that's created some opportunities for them to get pressure on the opposing passer. So I think you sort of tie those things together. Those are 2 pretty big reasons why you might want to play more zone, because you can get pressure with 4, at least you have in weeks past, and you can keep eyes on Josh Allen. And then, of course, there's the Stephon Diggs factor. I like Jonathan Jones. He's a fantastic corner, and his ability to sort of kick outside like he has this year has been part of what they've done in the secondary, and it's led to some good results for them. And Bill Belichick completely trusts Jonathan Jones. And the reason why I think we know that is in years past when they played the Kansas City Chiefs and Tyreek Hill, Jones would get Tyreek Hill. I mean, that's how they did it. So I think you will see some moments when they want to play, man, it's Jones versus Diggs. But still, I think you want to do more than just leave him on an island with Stephon Diggs. Like, I mean, we all know the Belichick MO, which is take away what you do best. Right now, that's Stephon Diggs in the passing game. So he's going to want to try to find a way to sort of take that. Maybe it's more zone stuff with, safety help shaded that way. Maybe it's the old Jalen Mills and dedicated safety help in the form of Devin McCourty, but McCourty got a little dinged up, so we'll wait and see on that. But I think this is, like you said, Aaron, the marquee matchup. Like, can the Patriots slow down Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs in that passing game? If they can, they got a puncher's chance at this game. If it's like we saw in the playoffs with your shirt, well, I mean, then we're moving on to Arizona pretty quickly after Thursday night.
Yeah, but this is I do think, I wear this shirt, but I do think Bills fans need to probably dial back what those games were the last 2 times the Bills have played the Patriots. Like, that's anomalies against the Bill Belichick type defense. And I think there's a lot of people rushing to kind of dump on Bill Belichick in the post Brady era, and that, this guy sucks now because he lost the greatest quarterback of all time, and all of a sudden he sucks. But this coach and this team seems to be continuing well prepared, but this defense, especially, outside of the Bills' performances against them those last couple of times, this defense has held up to being consistently a Bill Belichick type defense, a well-coached defense. Talk specifically about sort of this defensive back room. You can clump in the safeties and the defensive backs as a whole, because this is an area where, similar to what we feel about Sean McDermott and Leslie Frazier and their ability to just get guys in this system and just be able to produce at a high level and put up really efficient defenses that bend but don't break in a modern NFL, Bill Belichick continues to do it. Talk about this sort of deep group that you guys have sort of got over the past couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, for all the sort of criticism that Belichick gets from a draft and a draft evaluation standpoint, right? I mean, Cole Strange in the first round. We all saw the Les Snead, Sean McVay clip when they were joking, well, we thought he might be there in the 3rd round for us. I guess not. And certainly their struggles to identify and draft an ex-receiver type, N'Keal Harry, for example. They've done a very good job at cornerback, at identified talent. You look at Jack Jones, you look at Marcus Jones, contributions those 2 guys have made both on defense and on special teams. Obviously, Marcus Jones with the punt return touchdown to beat the Jets in the closing seconds of that game. They've found talent in the secondary. Going into training camp, I was on many shows where I said, look, secondary is a concern. Like, you're bringing in all these guys back, Malcolm Butler coming back, for example. I don't know who they're going to call upon. Can Jonathan Jones truly kick outside? Is Jalen Mills going to be a good CB2? What happens in the slot? Things like that. The 2 Jones rookies, fantastic contributions already. And so that's been great to see. The thing that's been really interesting, and I sort of touched on this a second ago, moving back, really sort of leaning into the single high stuff, cover 1, cover 3, because in recent years, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, the Patriots were part of that trend to go into the 2 high looks. They were really going into more zone coverage looks. They were really sort of leaning into the 2 high, cover 2, cover 4 quarters sort of world. And as everybody's moved in that direction, they've moved away from it. And so I think that's been an interesting thing to track. Now, 1 high, single high is not a world I want to live in against Josh Allen, just generally speaking. So we'll see if that trend continues, or like we talked about, you do see more, zone, 2 high, stuff like that. What's been interesting is, how they're doing it. They're trying to take away throws in the middle of the field with a lot of 1 cross, where you're taking Duggar down and you're dropping them into that area over the middle, trying to take away digs and crossers and all those types of routes that A, have given the Patriots problems in the past, and B, Josh Allen has burned them on in the past. And so you almost can't help but wonder if this was something that they had in mind, if this was sort of the game that they had circled. Like, look, we want to take that stuff away in the middle of the field. We want to play this 1 cross, single high stuff to take away those digs, those shallows, those crossers, all that stuff that Josh Allen has beaten us over the head with in the past. We want to be able to have that down, so when we see these guys after Thanksgiving, we're ready to go. And so, the secondary sort of coming together has been big for them. but it hasn't been great. And let's give this some context, because yes, they've had some good defensive performances in recent weeks, but they've come against Jared Goff, Jacoby Brissett, Zach Wilson twice, and Sam Ellinger. Like, those are the 5 quarterbacks they've beaten, in the past couple of weeks.
DVOA still likes you guys.
DVOA does still like them, so there is something to be said for that. But yeah, it's the good quarterbacks that they've played. Tua, Aaron Rodgers, Kirk Cousins, they've lost to.
So flipping around to the other side here, and I think part of the reason that we've seen some of those losses is the inability to outscore some of those teams. And that if it gets into a shoe, if you get dragged down into the muck, the Patriots have the defense and the running game to just outlast you in those kind of matchups. If it starts to get away from them, we've seen that they're not able to keep up to that extent. I think that, coming in, everybody knew there was going to be, matter of fact, I think maybe people expected even a little more out of the offensive line. I think we've seen, a bounce back from David Andrews, Michael Onwenu's a strong player, finally got a chance to play significant snaps and I think has, rightfully looked good. Ramondre Stevenson has just been, more than I hoped he would be coming into this year. I was a big Damian Harris supporter, but seeing Stevenson last year, every clip he just runs, the size speed combination is crazy. How has he stepped into an even bigger role this year to where honestly he's become the centerpiece of this offense?
He really has, Greg. And I think he's a rare blend of speed, power, and footwork. Like, he has, the footwork of a James White in a sense, where you'd be like, hey, he could be a third down back, but he has the power and the vision and the one cut ability to be a featured back in this offense. And I mean, look at, the screen that he had on 3rd and long, where he was just carrying guys for first down. But then you see him make cuts, be a weapon in the passing game, be a weapon when they go with more inside zone, tight zone type of plays, and it's just one cut and go. The vision to make those moves and make those reads and decisions. It's been a huge part of this offense because, the passing game has been wildly inconsistent. And I think the way you sort of teed that up, Greg, is exactly right. They're built to win rock fights. And we are seeing more rock fights across the league with scoring being down and everything we've seen league wide. This might be the first year in recent memory where you can win rock fights. You can make the playoffs if you're built to win rock fights. But the second it gets to be a game like Thursday night where it's like, oh, you've got to score points, they've got enough to stay there, but not enough to sort of get over the top. And the real problem right now is red zone scoring. Like, it is woeful. They are 31st in the league in touchdown percentage when they get into the red zone, just behind the Indianapolis Colts and just ahead of the Denver Broncos. That is not good company. And, that includes Thursday night's game. And people might say, and I've had people say, well, what about the Hunter Henry play? Like, if that's a touchdown, it wouldn't have changed it. They'd still be 31st. Like, it's bad right now. And it's a combination of inconsistency up front, some breakdowns and miscommunications. Like, they had one play in the red zone on Thursday night where Stevenson's actually flexed outside to the boundary. He runs a curl while the slot receivers running the speed out, and they're just like right next to each other. Jones ends up throwing it away. You've had some protection breakdowns. You had an inexplicable decision from the de facto offensive coordinator to run a reverse to Kendrick Bourne, and they were just sitting on it and waiting for it. And so it's, coaching, it's inconsistencies in blocking, inconsistencies up front. And then sometimes there are mistakes from Mac Jones. You look at, a couple of red zone plays he had early in the year against the Ravens where he's just forcing throws and interceptions. And so they might be built to win rock fights. I don't think this game Thursday is setting up to be one of those. They're going to have to score points. And I'm not so sure that they will be, like I said, they can keep games close, but I don't know if in the passing game in particular, they have enough to sort of throw themselves to a win.
So, let's talk about that a little bit here, because I think that uncertainty is not what was expected coming into this year, where it was expected to be, hey, we've seen these year 2 leaps from these other quarterbacks who had strong rookie years. Obviously, I'm sure you've debated this internally. You've been asked it 100 times. How much of this is Mac Jones regressing to whatever extent you want to call it, a regression on himself? How much of it is the Matt Patricia cocktail, Joe Judge cocktail of what he's doing, and that maybe losing, McDaniels in his ear was a bigger hit than what people expected.
I mean, I like everything in life. I think it's a little bit of both, or maybe a big bit of both is perhaps a better way to put it, because it's never good for, and we have talked, the three of us, both on shows and off, about consistency around the quarterback in terms of helping quarterback development, because Josh Allen is a great example of that. The presence of Brian Daboll until he left this past offseason was a big part of that. And having Ken Dorsey still in the fold is still a nod to having that consistency around the quarterback. When you take a quarterback, go from Alabama to Josh McDaniels, and then whatever they decided to do this past summer, that's not great to try to set you up for that year 2 leap. And then when you decide after the first week of the season, or maybe at the end of training camp, that, hey, that offense we were trying to install, that under center, outside zone, wide zone, it's not working. We're going to scrap it and figure things out as the season unfolds. It's even worse for sort of quarterback development. And then you can sort of, and Dan's point is brilliant, like the play action and RPO stuff, they're finally mixing in more and more RPOs week in and week out. But I think they need to do more of that, because that's something that Jones did a ton of at Alabama. I think you saw flashes of the under center play action game. The touchdown to Henry on Thursday night is an example of that, but you need to see more of that. And that might help cure some of what ails them in the red zone. But they're still sort of figuring it out. And other people, Darren Lofsky and others, have highlighted how some route combinations don't seem to make sense. Timing of drops to route combinations doesn't seem to make sense at times. Things don't seem to be synced up. And so I think there's a lot schematically that is still in flux and needs to be worked out. But Jones has a role to play in this as well. And even on moments where things have been able to click for him, even on moments where he had options, his eyes aren't always where they need to be when they need to be there. His eyes aren't, moving off of that first option if it's not open to him. And so there's a lot going on here. And they're trying to sort of land this plane mid-season with it sort of falling apart and a wing flapping a little bit more than it should and things like that, which is not good as we're getting into that stretch of the season that we just talked about is going to make or break their sort of 2020 campaign. And so, the 2022 campaign. And so, part of it is Jones. Part of it, and I think a larger part of it, is the fact that when you're trying to take that year 2 leap as a quarterback and get to where you need to be, but you've got so many changes happening. And the other thing, they also changed how protections were being called. That's a lot to throw into a second-year quarterback's lap right before the season starts.
Yeah, that's a ton going on in season. But if anyone can do it, right, it's a Belichick-led organization. So, but Mark, we got to do it to you, man. You know the routine. You've been here enough. We're going to put you on the spot. Give us a little bit of a how you see the game going, and then give everybody what your final score prediction is going to look like.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to say, I haven't looked at Foxborough weather. I'd love to see 60-mile-an-hour wind gusts. And,
we know he can throw in that they waited too long. So hopefully,
I'd love to see something like that, like we had for that first of the 3 games last year. But I don't think that's going to be the situation. And it sort of gets us to where I was a couple minutes ago. This is a team that's built to win rock fights, and I don't think it's going to be a rock fight. I think the Bills are going to get points in this game. For all the angst and concern over the Bills offense right now, I still think that this is a Bills offense that is going to start figuring things out. Allen's going to be fine. Don't worry about Josh Allen. And I think, resting that elbow a little bit, like he's going to be ready to go. I think it's a game where the Patriots will score some points and keep themselves in it. But like I just sort of talked about, like, I don't think if this turns into a Mac Jones versus Josh Allen shootout, they've got what it takes to win that game. Right. Maybe they will down the road, later this season, next year, something like that. Right now, it's hard to see that. I think it's like 27-21 Buffalo. I mean, like I said, New England can keep it close, but I don't think they'll have that extra to sort of get over the top.
No, it makes sense, and that it's certainly interesting to see things come along here. I think that we're excited to be able to go through there. You get a lot of love in the chat here. Cliff, certainly a big fan.
I appreciate that.
Appreciates all your work and
appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always a joy to be able to talk with you. And we got a couple matchups here. I kind of like that they delayed both of the Patriots Bills matchups to late in the season here. It
is nice.
Let the weather get certainly tuned up. I just looked. I see 43 but 0% chance of precipitation, about a
Anyways,
10 to 15 mile an
That's
hour
perfect
wind.
football weather, man.
Yeah, it does not look like it's going to be.
Man.
So
43 in New England in November. That's like
I mean, that's
chef's kiss.
10 to
that's
15
December.
miles an
It'll
hour.
be-
not
people be
enough
wearing
to-
shorts and a t-shirt.
Yeah.
You'll see some. You'll probably see
Yeah.
some shirtless.
Sorry,
New Englanders.
Julian will still have red sleeves on. It'll be okay.
That's it.
No, but we appreciate your time, Mark. I'll let the people know what where they can find anything else you're working on or what you have coming up next.
Well, guys, it's always a blast coming on. Already looking forward to the next time we do it. I don't know if we're going to get 3 this year. Probably not. But you never know. You never know. On Twitter, on the Bird app, at Mark Schofield, SB Nation, writing about obviously a ton of NFL stuff, but I'm also doing some Formula One, doing some World Cup. They let me spread the wings a little bit, which is kind of fun. But
That's cool.
Tons of football coverage there too. But gentlemen, always a pleasure. Love coming on. Love what you guys do. Keep crushing it here at Cover One. You guys do
Appreciate
such
you,
great work.
man.
Yeah, I appreciate you so much. We'll talk soon. Hopefully
Enjoy
both
the
teams come out of
holidays.
this healthy,
You too, gentlemen.
and we'll get back together again.
Sounds great, guys. Have a good one.
Appreciate
Take care,
you, Mark.
buddy.
Always one of our favorite guests.
Good to catch up
every
with
time
them,
when
too.
it comes up, and it's always a good time to be able to go through. And it's a weird time to be covering the Patriots because, God, it's just we can pretend that it's surprising that a career defensive coordinator and a career special teams coordinator haven't turned into great offensive coordinators when they've literally never done it before. Like, it's just such a weird look of how to go through everything.
Yeah, it is. But I mean, if anyone knows that sort of this period of time for the Patriots is like, it's Bills fans. I don't know how long they'll be in this sort of in the hunt, hanging out, playing their best football now, but probably going to disappoint their fan base and be sub 500. We did that a lot of the time. And you had
so much.
You had, it would either be the offense is really good or the defense is really good, but you can never line the two things up. And that's where I see the Patriots right now is you see a defense that is a really good defense. And in a couple of years, I'm sure Patriots fans are going to look back and be like, man, if we could have just had a little bit better quarterback play or, just something else that we could have had a really good team there. That's kind of where this Patriots team is at to me. And so good though. They need to have that type of suffering because it's only been like 2-3 years and they still are making the playoffs. They're not even really begun a drought yet.
They've got so much
they
suffering
can
still
suffer.
to
Yeah,
come.
they've got a long way to go.
So before we kind of dive in and look at some of the Bills stuff that's coming up here, anything else in the matchup that stuck out to you that you want to touch on or that you found interesting?
This is hard, right, Greg? Because we just recovered from a victory here and had a holiday weekend. And obviously this is still Sunday. If you're listening to this, we're recording Sunday night here during Sunday Night Football. So DVOA hasn't even updated yet for the games that the Bills and Patriots have played. So there's some data there from previous week that I don't know how much it's going to translate, but we know sort of roughly that this Patriots team is what we expect them to be, which is a very good defense. They were top DVOA defense heading into the week, the number one pass DVOA defense, which
it might not be number one after this, but they're not going to drop past the top couple.
And because it's DVOA and the Minnesota offense has been playing well, they might, it depends. The Bills came out of that similar score, similar difficult defensive day against Minnesota, and they didn't change a ton in where they were in DVOA. So I don't know if it's going to be a big dramatic dip. Either way, we know this is a good defense, but the offense was ranked 26th overall. It's similar to what the Bills have had for matchups, but with a slightly better defense. So this overall matchup, the thing that concerns me, Greg, is one, I think fans are looking at those last two matchups from a year ago and thinking that, we've figured out Belichick and we're just going to go in and boat race the Patriots and get everything right again, right? Like we figured this out. And I do think people have been too quick to bury Belichick. This is still a really well-coached team with a good scheme, players that know how to play it. And if Josh is going to be playing the way that he has over the last, let's really be honest now, month of football and really this whole year playing sloppy with the ball, they're going to take opportunities. And this is a team that is good enough with some of the stuff you talked about on that offensive side of the ball that concern me with some of the Bills' actual weaknesses on offense, that they could do some things and hurt you with turnovers. And so there's a little bit of concern in how the teams match up. Again, if the Bills play clean, I think that they could put this team away and deal with it. And we could talk about that in our predictions and stuff. But the overall, this is still a well-coached football team. And the Bills, if there was ever a time to finally clean it up, man, now is the absolute time because they got to get this going here for this AFC East run.
And obviously I brought up the name that we need to be most concerned with, Ramondre Stevenson. And when I say centerpiece of their offense, he has almost as many yards from scrimmage as Stephon Diggs.
Yeah, man.
He's just behind Diggs in their season-long total. But one other name I want fans to watch out for is Jacoby Myers. He's a really sneaky receiver. Like, he's really good. Like, he's athletic. He's good at finding open space.
He's aggressive at the point of attack.
Yes, that's what makes me nervous is that what we've seen here. I'm hoping we get a little bit more, maybe 50% snaps out of Trey. And I'm really hoping that he spends more time on Myers and is able to kind of help negate some of what he can do, because he really has the chance to go up and attack the ball, at the high point. And obviously we've seen with Dane Jackson and, we haven't seen Christian Benford. So now maybe it'll be Xavier Rhodes. Maybe it's a couple more snaps out of Kyer Elam. I'm hoping we get the Rhodes and Elam and Trey on Jacoby Myers, and to a lesser extent, Devontae Parker, because we know neither of them are going to, roast guys to get wide open, but they can both go up and get the ball at the point of attack. And that's certainly been a point of, challenge for this defense. So when you add in a strong offensive line, a really good running back, Ramondre Stevenson has legitimately become a top 10 running back in the NFL. And then you have guys who are good jump ball
work
receivers.
Off that play action.
That when you do put the ball up there, they can go make a play on it. Now, all of a sudden, you're building that recipe of the kind of teams the Bills have struggled with. And it's important, game script is going to be important, getting out to a lead, not letting them lean on the run game and just do that play action jump ball offense. I think that's going to be a key point.
Yeah, I think it's going to come down to what Mac Jones you get, right? If it's the Mac Jones from last week that is playing with confidence, and we make jokes about Tua before, and obviously I think Bills fans have to dial back a lot of that, and probably we've still also probably have to dial back some of the Mac Jones, even though he's had the struggles you mentioned here early in year 2. He had a really nice game on film a week ago. And when he's playing with confidence and putting the ball out for some of these guys to make plays, they do have playmakers that if you get the ball in their hands, whether it's guys out of the backfield or like you said, Jacoby Myers, the tight ends can still make plays. If they got a guy distributing the ball with confidence, it goes a long way to them actually being able to have an offense that can put points on the board. I think their problem right now is, like Mark said, they really rely on the rock fights, and they're relying on that defense to hold you under 20 points, and that they're hoping that offense can kind of be right there at the end to maybe squeak out 24, 25, 6 points in order to steal a game, instead of what they did this past week, which everybody saw more recently with their ability to put up 30 points and have an offense that moves. If they're going to be that type of offense as they change their identity, as Mark was talking about, and start to be able to open things up a little bit more because the run game's getting successful, maybe we're going to see a different team here down the stretch. But if we see the Mac Jones, the bigger sample size that we've seen from Mac Jones against this Bills defense, then I feel pretty good about, I don't know that they can get over 20 against this Bills defense the way he's played most of the season.
So let's talk a little bit about this Bills team, switch back, maybe a little bit on the injury reports. Let's start with one of the bigger stories, and then we'll talk about some of the other guys that we think we might be making.
I don't even want to talk about, do I have to legally talk about?
Yeah, a little
better
bit,
news.
a little bit.
Yeah, it's good.
So yeah, it's maybe least worst case scenario news. So Josina Anderson here, just the latest update we've seen, and this is in line with every other tweet we've seen from Ian Rappaport, Adam Schefter, everybody else. I'm told the Bills currently are expecting Von Miller to give his knee approximately 7 to 10 days following the Thanksgiving Day injury. So that's definitely through this, but maybe into that Jets game, which sounds insane, to allow more swelling to go down for better reevaluations. Per source, it was said Miller is staying encouraged, and it helps he's been through this before. Everything we've heard is that it is a lateral meniscus injury. It's something that he may be able to play through, but there's also a chance the inflammation doesn't go down, that the whatever you want to call it, like the part that's chipped off is just rubbing too much. And if he has to have surgery, everything that we've heard is it is not the kind where it would be the quick cleanup and he'd come back in a couple weeks. If he has surgery, it is done for the year. If he can manage the inflammation, manage the swelling, and play through it with a brace on, he can wait and have that cleanup surgery after the season is over. In which case, I do think we've at least avoided impact on the 2023 season, which obviously when it first looked like ACL, that looked like the worst case. They have an older player that we lose for this year, and it's so just like Trey that it also impacts next season. So I think we've
really
at least avoided that. Yeah. So, but what were your thoughts hearing this? Obviously, the mix of relief, the mix of hope, and now still the anxiety of waiting to hear, probably like a week from today of whether we have any chance of getting him back.
I think there's a good chance that they're going to get him back from the reports that we're seeing. I think it's leaning in that direction. Him having optimism, everybody staying encouraged and having optimism.
I know he also made a comment on his Twitch channel while he was on there streaming, saying that he expected to be back in a week or two.
I mean, here's one thing though. I watched a bunch of his podcasts and stuff. He speaks in positive affirmations. Like he will not put out a negative thought. So I think that some of that too, we have to take with a grain of salt of he's not going to say anything that isn't exactly what he wants it to be because he's going to put it out there to visualize it. That's just the kind of guy he is. Yep. I think he wants to be back out there. If it's 2 weeks, that's a huge benefit to the Bills. If this runs through, my fear is that it runs through this whole AFC East gauntlet. Like you need him for that Miami Dolphins game, in my opinion. Like that's really become the game that we maybe thought the Chiefs game was. Like this game is really that Miami Dolphins one's going to be the game. And this whole stretch here you want him for, but if you can just get through these next two and just it be a 2 week thing, that's an absolute win for the Bills in terms of the pile of injuries that they've had to deal with and how scary it looked and how freaking sick I felt at my Thanksgiving table.
Watching his face on the cart, I was in my
I thought
head,
the season was
I was sure that his season was done and that our season was potentially done along with it.
It wasn't good. I do think that the Bills can still be a good team and sustain without a Von Miller, but God, man, his presence has been able to be something that is sort of like a rock with all these other injuries that they sustain. Like if it wasn't for Vaughn being on this team, I don't think I would have been able to handle no Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer for any stretch of time. Like the fact that you still had that superstar at a level of your defense. And so to know that he's going to be coming back, and I think maybe it's something where we see him more managed to what we thought we were going to see from him early in the season. We know
for
that
sure the rest of the regular season.
Yeah. And just manage that and hopefully get some of these young guys back. And maybe that's a blessing in disguise to get them going a little bit more. And then we kind of unleash Vaughn a little bit more when you need him the most.
So let's speak about some of those other guys here. Some positive reports that came out of practice today. We saw Mitch Morse practicing. We saw Tremaine Edmonds practicing. And we saw Gregory Rousseau back practicing. Those were three big pieces missing from that Detroit game, who are all critical pieces to this game, especially when you talk about Ramondre Stevenson. Having Gregory Rousseau and Tremaine Edmonds back are a huge part of containing and managing that Patriots run game.
Yeah, I'm almost interested to know, like, especially with the Tremaine injury, if it was all along they knew that they were going to manage it to ramp up for this AFC East here run through that they're coming up to. I think they had this circled on the schedule of trying to get things ramped up, but another sickness I saw went through today. Yeah, so if you guys missing again practice,
another chunk of guys kept home due to some kind of non-COVID illness they reported.
Tough stretch, man. I'm guessing that maybe they'll be in waves or something here for the upcoming week. Seems like 5 guys out of practice.
Yeah, we'll see as those guys come back here and as
does not seem to impact those guys in terms of the week though. It seems like they come right back and participate.
AJ Epinesa also was going through some things on the side. So a couple other guys working their way back. Trey White, no restrictions. Kair Elam, no restrictions. Those are all very encouraging things. So we did see a couple other transactional things. We saw Christian Benford. We talked about the oblique injury that our producer Chris Kepner had brought up during the post-game show. That was nothing that anybody had known about until the post-game presser. So now having Christian Benford put on IR was a surprise. He did say week to week, but IR was a bit of a surprise. And then he was replaced by Xavier Rhodes being signed to the 53-man roster off the practice squad. We then saw they brought back CJ Brewer, which obviously we lost Brandon Bryant and Justin Zimmer. Brandon Bryant got signed to Houston's active roster. Justin Zimmer got signed to the Dolphins active roster. So we brought back CJ Brewer as kind of our emergency practice squad defensive tackle. And then a familiar face, we got John Smoke Brown brought back at wide receiver. I think more realistically, the person to push Tanner Gentry for that wide receiver 5. I think some people have gotten excited. And I will say the comments made by Sean McDermott and Josh Allen in their pressers today leaned towards more of a role than what I envisioned. Seemed to indicate at least expectation he would be on the active roster and playing versus the Kenny Stills break glass in case of emergency, veteran wide receiver on the practice squad. So we'll see where that goes. But comments about what a good shape he was keeping himself in, how good he looked in the workout, and some expectations from Josh. So I have tried to temper people's expectations. He did not look great at the tail end with Buffalo. He wasn't able to catch on with teams last year. I don't know if, he was battling through some kind of injury that he got himself healthy, but there's a reason he was unsigned to this point. So I'm trying to manage expectations with John Brown, but I also loved him, when he was here. So I'll let my fanhood talk me into being excited.
Yeah, I think I typed out a few ways to describe what I was thinking about the John Brown signing when I saw Twitter. I wasn't on a lot today when the news came out, but I did see some people getting really excited about this. And I get that you bring in a guy that you had success with. He was a big part of Josh's development. I just don't know, right? Like you're saying the last time we saw him, it wasn't good. And then he went on and still wasn't able to really do anything, struggled with some injuries. I know he feels good when you hit that 30. He's going to be 32. He's 32 now. He'll be 33. Like when you hit that age and you've had some injuries, sometimes what you feel and what's actual isn't there. And so I think he probably is in good enough shape for the Bills to get him in. I think you're right. It's more a competition for that wide receiver 5 spot that we know was in flux, that people were worried about them only having the 4 active receivers. I think that fills that role. I don't know how that
if
plays
his straight
out
line speed is there as just a field stretcher a couple times a game, I'm okay with that.
Get him in, but we got to pump our own brakes just in the sense of like, look at how we felt about Nyheim Hines and his role and how frustrated we are with them not having the ability to get him involved in the game. So I don't think that John Brown automatically comes in and just jumps over everybody. Isaiah McKenzie just had a very good game, and he's going up against a team that we're talking, are they going to play a lot of man or zone? And he's had some success again. So I don't think John Brown automatically comes in and fixes any of the issues that you have. He's not going to be a guy that usurps Gabe Davis's role in this offense, even though people are frustrated with him. It is what it is. I just don't want people to get really excited about this guy. I think that we'll probably see very limited action from John Brown. Everyone in the organization is going to say really good things about John Brown when he comes back. Like
he was legitimately a good person. Yes. Everyone really liked being with him.
When John was here the first time, Josh like raved about what a good teammate he was and trying to teach him how to be a professional athlete. When Josh first got here, like everyone's very fond of John Brown. So they're all going to say the nicest things about him in these press conferences and talk about what an important factor he's going to be to this team. But the fact is, like, where are the snaps for John Brown? I just don't see him.
Well, there goes Stephen Burns talking about 5 fly routes a game, and we're good.
Sure, find some touches for him. I'm cool with that.
So here's a guy we could get excited about. A weird story. It seems like Odell Beckham Jr. maybe took a few too many sleeping pills on a plane, heading out of Miami to one of his team visits here, and was in a situation where the plane pulled away from the gate, began to taxi. He fell asleep with a blanket over his head. And then it went back to the gate. And then somewhere in between there are 2 very different versions of the story of him being unwilling to put a seatbelt on, or him not being awake when they were asking him to put a seatbelt on, and being asked to leave the plane. So a little bit weird. He's a known commodity. This is a non-issue for me.
Every GM said nobody cares. Basically,
yeah, Jordan Schultz confirmed it here.
Yeah. Everybody's saying that nobody cares about this story as long as it is what everybody's report is hearing that it is. I mean, we've all been there. I got on a train once after taking some edibles and went on like a 3-hour train ride. And I don't know. I really am not sure what happened the last hour and a half of the train ride. I could have been a real jerk. I don't know. Somebody might have been trying to wake me up and kick me off a train. So I'd still sign me after that.
Yeah, I'd still sign you too. So we'll see where things go. There's also plenty of reports. I think that we are both realistic that the Bills are.
They're not number 1 anymore.
I think the Bills are the 2nd team in the running.
Yeah.
I think that it is more likely than not that he signs with the Cowboys, but I don't think it's a slam dunk, and I think it's still possible.
Vaughn not being out for the year.
Yeah, Vaughn not being out for the year keeps us alive.
They can hang out in the training room for like a couple of weeks and rest their knees. Vaughn will be in there all year. I'm sure they can just kick it, man.
Yeah. Stephen Burns here bringing up a comment. Randall Cobb, who is older than John Brown, just caught a touchdown pass tonight. So, so some reasons for hope and optimism to be able to keep alive here. Anything else outside of there before we get into our predictions for the game? Like I said, I mentioned the weather. It looks like it's going to be cold. So the low for that day is 25. It won't be the low during the game. The high is 43. So it's going to be chilly.
Probably start to get down
30s
once that's
by game time.
Yeah, once that sun goes down.
Yeah, it'd be in the 30s for the game. It does not look like any chance of precipitation. Does not look like high winds.
January 15th.
It is a little similar to January 15th. A little similar to January 15th.
That would be nice.
So beyond that, anything else that piqued your interest this week of different stories going on or things that are floating around there?
Honestly, the only thing is that I want to kind of talk to you about really is, again, I didn't get to spend a lot of time on social media outside of checking in every once in a while when I was sneaking off from the family, but I was so busy I didn't get a ton of time to check in. But I saw a lot of people that I know and respect talking about how nasty Bills Mafia got and what like in disarray Bills Mafia seemed to be after a win and where the team is at. And even Mark kind of seeing that sort of angst about Josh Allen and where the team's at. I haven't got to really talk to you even a lot. We were just mostly talking about the holidays. Kind of where are you at? Where are you seeing the Mafia at? Like what's going on? Because I continue to see, Greg, a team that we've seen before that has flaws. We know how they can play. They're not playing their best football yet, but we think that they can get some of these flaws fixed and play their best football when they need to, which is here coming up, right?
Yeah. So first I'll say I didn't have some terrible experience online with things. I didn't see people losing their minds. There obviously was some, I guess, anxiety about the game, but mostly, excitement about the win and being able to do it. I think most people seem to acknowledge or understand how many people we were missing and how many players were out. So, maybe some frustration that Amon-Ra St. Brown was able to have the game that he was able to have, but also, if we had Kyrie Elam and Trey White playing the full game, maybe he wouldn't be able to do that. And, those kind of things I think were most reasonable people seem to be okay in that space. Now, needing some of those different things to come together, maybe some anxiety about the protections and about the offensive line being able to get back together. The same thing when we've been healthy. Ike Bacher is another name that now the practice 21-day window has opened up for him. Mm-hmm. So it looks like maybe we get some.
Yeah, wow, I didn't expect that this year.
Yeah, that's come along quicker than I expected.
Yeah.
So, maybe a couple of things there, but Deion Dawkins also not practicing today. Yeah. I don't love that. So some things that it certainly has been a mix of anxiety, excitement for the two tough wins, but not the riding high that we had earlier in the season.
And I get on the injury front, like it feels deflating, especially after the Vaughn injury and not knowing, like it seems like every time we're about to get a guy back healthy, somebody else gets hurt and starts that window of like, okay, how many weeks is it going to be? And now we're looking at a 2 to 3 week window. I do think there's probably also some anxiety of this upcoming 3-game stretch here, Greg, that we maybe talked a lot of smack as a fan base, and maybe the team's not as gonna just roll through every single opponent like they thought they would, and it's not going to be what my shirt says where you just go to New England and you just plow through them and you don't punt. You're going to have games and issues in the season where it comes up, and now you've got this 3-game stretch where I know when we looked at the schedule, it seemed like we were going to just rattle through the division. That doesn't look that way anymore. And I think that maybe that's where some of the anxiety is mounting to this upcoming stretch.
Yeah, I think that there's, reason for a shift in perspective, reason for, just a different view in that, I've told people I was on a round table last night with guys from, Rockpile and Buffalo Fanatics and hashtag and a bunch of different places. And we were talking through that, it's weird to be in a spot where the regular season just matters less than it did the last 20 years. In that if we get the number 1 seed and have home field advantage, but lose in the playoffs, no one's going to care.
Right.
If we come in as a wild card and go on a run and win games in the playoffs, like both 4 seeds last year, the Bengals and the Rams had to do it on the road and from a 4 seed spot through the wild card round, no one's going to care. Like it's going to be nothing we accomplish in the next 6 games is going to matter in any, frame versus what we accomplish in the playoffs. The only thing will indicate success for a Buffalo Bills season is what we do in the playoffs. And now, of course,
winning the division guarantees it, right?
I mean, it guarantees one home playoff game.
But no, I'm saying it guarantees you the ticket to the playoffs. If you're then you're competing with the wild card, and if we're saying things don't matter, and they say they drop 2 out of these AFC East games like that significantly matters. So this part of the regular season matters more than the rest.
Let's even talk through that. Let's say they do drop 2 of these, and that means they end up being 9-5. They're still like 95% to make the playoffs at 9-5. Like I get it that it kind of matters, but it really doesn't. It still doesn't.
New York Times
the amount of teams
has
now falling off. The
80% chance to make the playoffs. Dropping these 2, if you were to the Patriots and Jets, say they beat the Jets and probably not Miami. I'm not going to say they're going to lose to the Jets twice with Mike White. Okay, so you're at 90%, but then you can't drop another one, can you? Because you're not going to beat the Bengals, or you're not going to drop one to the Bears. It would be the Bengals or Pats, so it's going to be AFC.
Yeah, so I just there's the situation that they're in. I don't believe that there's a realistic scenario where in those final 6 games they would need to go 1-5 to miss the playoffs.
Yeah.
Because I think 2-4 even is a pretty good chance. 3-3 is a slam dunk. You are absolutely automatically in the playoffs at 3-3. 2-4, they still got a pretty good shot. They're not going 1-5.
If this team goes 2-4 or even 500 and heads into the playoffs, they're not. You need to be going on that run that we always talk about heading into the playoffs. And maybe it doesn't need to start in this AFC run, but I would sure like it to. And to just rattle it off and take care of the division and get it done with, and know that you're checked in to your playoff spot heading in. Like that is the way. I don't need the 1 seed, but I would like to rattle off this.
Sure.
AFC East, keep it at arm's length, and know going into week 18 that we're not playing for any type of positioning in the playoffs.
Yeah. And so Steve's comment here, I think this is actually where a lot of fans, I think, are unrealistic and off base with what they think Super Bowl teams are. Because in the year the Chiefs actually won the Super Bowl, they lost 3 out of 4 games and had a really ugly stretch.
Yeah.
In Tampa Bay's season, where they won the Super Bowl, they won 3 out of 5 games and had a really ugly stretch. Last year, the Los Angeles Rams lost 3 straight games to 2 crappy teams.
I'm pretty sure Aaron Rodgers
still went on.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Aaron Rodgers' only Super Bowl, they were the wild card. In the last couple of years, they've had 1 seeds and done nothing with them. Yeah, I agree that you don't necessarily need to win out the 1 seed, or it doesn't have to meet those expectations that we had. But I do want to pile up a nice amount of wins here, be one of the top seeds heading into the playoffs, and playing hot football. And I want to get back to the place where you're clearly the best team in this division and playing like you're the best team in this division, giving the team and the fan base that expectation every single week.
Yeah, the Chiefs were, I think as someone brought it up here, Justin, in the chat, the Chiefs were 1 of 5 in the red zone against the Rams backups. The 3-8 or the 3-7 terrible Rams with their practice squad players were 1-5 in the red zone today.
Look at the Jags versus the
let them hang
Ravens
close. The Jags beat the Ravens.
Yeah.
The Chiefs lost to the Colts. Like it's
it is a weird league.
We get these expectations, and we do not watch other teams with the same critical lens that we watch the Buffalo Bills. And we don't watch other coaches with the same critical lens that we watch other coaches. We don't watch other quarterbacks with the same critical lens that we watch other
cornerbacks.
Cornerbacks. We don't hold anyone else to the same standard that we hold the guys on the Bills roster. And then all of a sudden we pretend to be surprised when, I guess other teams do these dumb things. Patrick Mahomes threw a really dumb, wasteful red zone interception today.
Yeah. Justin Jefferson also dominates really good defenses.
Yeah, tons of other teams. Right. Jack Jones, the Patriots' #1 DVOA defense. Jefferson ripped them apart too. Yeah. Amon-Ra St. Brown's going to rip apart some more defenses the rest of the season. So don't get me wrong. the Bills have now come back down to earth. They were in their own stratosphere for a stretch of this season, and I
that's
think
part of the problem too, right,
yeah,
Greg? Is like
Bills
they
fans set their
played
expectations at that level.
Yeah, they played some wild stretch of football
Sure.
for 2 months of our visual seeing football, and set some crazy expectations that it's tough to, because we said for years on this show that like everyone's looking for perfection. You're never going to see a perfect game, and then Josh goes out and actually the whole defense, the whole team puts out a perfect game, and they're like, oh well, maybe that we could ask for perfection and expect it, but it is unreasonable. And again, not only comparing the team to their peers in terms of those individual levels, but on all the efficiency ratings. Like the Bills are still one of the top teams in the NFL, even though they're coming back down to regular, not God levels and massive gaps between the other teams, right? They're still a top team when you put it all together.
Yeah. And here's one that we can kind of use as we wrap up here before we give our predictions. So, Chase over at Football Guys, a guy that I'm a big fan of, had a tweet here that, really helped put some things into perspective. Josh Allen leads the NFL with 11 interceptions, and with Davis Mills being benched, Kirk Cousins and Matt Ryan with 9 each, those are the closest to him. So he's, leading the NFL in interceptions in a little bit of a stretch. No quarterback has led the NFL in interceptions and won the Super Bowl since all the way back with Matt Stafford with the Rams in February of last year when they won the Super Bowl, when Matt Stafford led the NFL in interceptions.
I don't like it. I understand it. That's an anomaly. I don't like playing anomalies. I want Josh Allen to clean up those interceptions. I don't want him to be.
And you want to know what? Matt Stafford didn't do that during the playoffs when they played well. But I think that's the frustration that I get, is that people extrapolate what they are seeing now as what is possible through the rest of the year. And that's no different. There's literally no difference than me saying, well, I saw them stomp the Titans 43-3 and the Steelers 37-3, and that's what I think is possible the rest of the way, and it has equal bearing. It is just as relevant as saying there, but because of recency bias, we assume that this is all that's possible now. Well, no, we're going to get back those players that were playing in the games when we stomped everybody. Those guys are coming back. It's just as reasonable for me to say, I think we're going to do those things. And of course, like everything else, the truth is in the middle. It's not any more likely that, nope, this is our new reality now. We're just going to pretend that the team that we've seen when we're short this constant rotation of starters, when almost all of them are expected to be back here, that we have no opportunity to be able to get back into that level of performance. Of course we have an opportunity to do that. We still have Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs.
Oh, I think absolutely they have the opportunity. And I think most people agree that at any point they become a freight train that can unlock and just stomp through any team in the league. I don't know if they'll get that. I don't even know if they need to get to that. They just need to get to a consistent level where they're not shooting themselves in the foot, not being the team that beats themselves. I still think I forget who exactly made the point. I think it was the Air Raid guys that, the Bills are undefeated against other teams and they have the 3 losses against themselves. Like, I think that's very true. And as long as they can clean that stuff up here heading to the end, and we've seen them do that. I think that's my ultimate point in not having the frustration with this team and having the patience to deal with some of the things people are frustrated about, is we've seen these things play out. Like, I've been a fan of this team long enough and I've covered them under the Sean McDermott era to know that, like, I have good data that tells me that this is going to turn around and things are going to head the right way. Maybe it won't, but I'm at least going to go with the experience that I've had before.
It didn't even turn around last year until week 14. We went through that 8-week stretch of win-loss, 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 where, during that stretch, we lost 5 out of 8 games. Yeah. And then all of a sudden at halftime of Tampa Bay, where we still lost that game in overtime. Yeah. That they finally flipped the switch, and there were only 4 regular season games left. So for everyone who is telling themselves, no, it's too late, the season's done, this is the point of last year where we had just won the Thanksgiving Day game and then lost 2 more games, the horrible game to the Patriots with the weather, and then the overtime game to the Buccaneers, where that was 5 losses in 8 weeks. And then they turned into literally the greatest offense we've ever seen in NFL history.
Yeah. And I guess my only concern, I've seen them be able to do this. My concern is some of the trends, right? We got to start to see some of the trends head in the other way direction. I think it starts this week. So switch it up and let's do our predictions. I'll go first here because I can keep it pretty short and sweet for you, Greg. I think New England wants, like Mark said, New England wants this game to be a rock fight. They want to try to keep the Bills turning the ball over, getting Josh Allen maybe confused with some of the pre-snap stuff, make him think he's getting something he's not, forcing it to Diggs. And he's going to continue to make some bad throws. I do think the elbow is a problem. I think he's going to make some throws maybe he thinks he can and struggle with that. And the Patriots have been pretty opportunistic. So I think I expect the turnovers to continue in this game and keep the Patriots around in this. I do think the Bills ultimately have the better quarterback, have too much firepower. The Patriots don't have enough on the offensive side to keep up. I think they do ultimately keep it a little bit closer than I'd like, but I think the Bills put up 27. I got it 27-24, so a little more than Mark, but I think some of it's late garbage stuff that looks a little bit closer than it is at the end. But I think the Pats, what is it, 5.5 right now. So I think the Pats can handle that. I do have the over. It's 45.5. So I have them going 51 here. I think there's some scoring. I think there might be even some defensive scoring, or both teams are getting turnovers. They're both +1 in turnover differential. And so I think there might be some sloppiness to this game or some turnovers in other teams' red zones where defenses can really capitalize on stuff. So we'll see how it goes, but I got it 27-24, and hopefully I can get back on a roll here, Greg, because my predictions have not been on with this team.
Yeah, you had a hot stretch there for a while.
For a little bit, yeah.
I'm not far off of there. I do think this is kind of an ugly game. I do think that they reduce the number of possessions. I think that we see a bunch of field goals again, which will be annoying. I've got it 26-19. I think that Buffalo is able to cover the spread, but I think it sits there right around the over-under, maybe a touch under, 26-19. And I think that it's going to be just kind of a down in the muck game. This Patriots defense is legit. I think they're going to give us trouble with getting the ball to Diggs consistently. We're going to need important game from the running backs out of the backfield, out of Isaiah McKenzie, out of Gabe Davis. They're going to need to step up here because Belichick is going to do everything in his power to reduce Diggs' ability to take over this game, and we've seen it before. We also know that,
legs.
Correct.
He's going to try to those things. He's going to try to keep that contained and make you beat him with and the Bills haven't proven they can do that.
Yeah. So we'll see where those things go. We need some of those other performances to step up, and we've seen it before. We've seen, Isaiah McKenzie just had a really strong game against Detroit, who also run a lot of man coverage, and we've seen that before from New England. But now it needs to be him doing it when it's expected, not when it's just a nice side bonus. And we haven't seen him do that. So that's what we're going to need to be able to see step up here. Any final thoughts for the people? Trying to get this out early for everybody listening. A little bit of a sneak surprise. We won't be here for you on Wednesday night, but Aaron and I will be back for you, obviously, immediately following this New England Buffalo game on Thursday night. Watching on Amazon. The first game for Bills we'll see on Amazon. That'll be interesting. I'm debating I might do that Prime Vision where you can see the full views pulled out.
I don't know. Yeah,
cool. I don't know if I can handle it the whole time, but I like being able to see who's on the field, so we'll see where we're.
It's like if the Bills get a Manning cast, I don't know if I could watch the Manning cast version. Like I still, even as bad as the broadcast can be, I think I just need to watch a classic broadcast, just because I don't like change. Actually, I'm just a creature of habit. But you want to catch us on the post game show for sure. Greg, I don't know. I might throw Spaces out at some point. I might text you, see if you're around while you're traveling here this week, and see if we can't get more content. It's going to be a big gap here between Sunday to the game where I'm just going to have to talk about the Bills, and we're going to probably get injury updates and stuff that we would normally get for the show, and some of the DVOA updates that we're going to want to talk about with people. So people should make sure they're following all the Cover One guys across all social media platforms. And whenever we're doing things like Spaces or doing shorts or shows or anything like that, make sure you're following, subscribed everywhere, because you'll get all that content if you're following along.
100%. I appreciate you guys. The chat was awesome tonight, especially on the night that we're not normally scheduled for. So I appreciate everybody jumping in, having fun with us. Make sure you're checking out, if you're just listening now, the awesome film room that Eric Turner and Nate Geary did, breaking down some of the things we're seeing with some of the hitches in the giddy up of Ken Dorsey's offense with Josh Allen. So make sure you're checking that out as well. Lots of stuff from across the entire platform. But on behalf of Aaron Quinn, I'm Greg Tompsett. You've been listening to Cover One Buffalo, and we are out.